It was a Sunday unlike any other in Carthage, North Carolina. A tranquil morning destined to become one of the darkest days the town had ever seen. A man called Robert Kenneth Stewart, a quiet loner with buried rage, pulled into the parking lot of the Pine Lake Health and Rehab nursing home just before 10 a.m., carrying more than just a troubled past. He stared at his estranged wife's car, Wanda, a nurse who'd recently escaped his possessive grip. He raised a rifle and shattered her window. Nobody thought he was looking for anyone else. Then, chillingly calm, he turned toward a visitor pulling in, fired, and struck him in the shoulder. The visitor ran inside, panting a warning. "There's a gunman." Moments later, a lone officer, Justin Garner, arrived. Stewart left one weapon behind, an ominous sign, and entered the building with two more, moving with deadly purpose. He roamed the hallways searching for Wanda. When he couldn't find her, she was hiding behind locked doors in the Alzheimer's unit. His aim turned brutal and indiscriminate. Stewart walked the corridors and began shooting residents, some in wheelchairs, others in beds. 7 elderly people were struck vitally: Louise DeClaire, Lillian Dunn, Tessie Garner, John Goldston, Bessie Hedrick, Margaret Johnson, and Jessie Musser. And a nurse named Jerry Avant rushed to help, only to be felled by Stewart's gunfire. Panic echoed through the halls as staff scrambled to save anyone they could. Within minutes, Stewart turned his weapon toward Officer Garner. A shot rang out, grazing the officer's leg and foot. Then, Garner returned fire, striking Stewart in the shoulder and finally stopping the carnage. When silence returned, 8 lives had been extinguished. Stewart lay wounded, clutching random explanations about taking nerve pills, claiming not to remember what happened. Families shattered in grief. One daughter's voice trembled with rage. "That man killed my mom like she was a roach." Another proclaimed, "He will not be where my mom is, ever." When it came to trial, Stewart's defense claimed he was zombified through Ambien, antidepressants, and anxiety meds. An overwhelmed mind without control. The jury found him guilty of second-degree murder, concluding he might have snapped, but ultimately, he was responsible. On sentencing day, witnesses filled the courtroom with grief. Judge James Webb sentenced Stewart to 142 to 179 and a half years behind bars, ensuring a lifetime behind prison walls. It begins in the quiet corridors of a hospital, where mercy and danger can hide behind the same coat. A nurse named Charles Cullen walked those halls, known to patients and staff for his quiet manner, his willingness to help. Few could ever have imagined the horror lurking beneath his calm exterior. It would take 16 years before anyone truly saw what was happening. The turning point came with a man called Reverend Florian Gall, a patient who had seemed to stabilize, someone people thought would recover. Then, without warning, he suffered a massive heart attack. The autopsy revealed something chilling: lethal levels of digoxin, a common heart medication. That discovery cracked open the hidden truth. It wasn't just that he used digoxin, it was how he used it that was terrifying. Cullen manipulated the hospital's Pyxis system, a computerized cabinet, months in the making, to bypass controls. He'd input a drug order, then immediately cancel it, yet the drawer would still open. He could walk away with lethal doses, leaving no record. Over time, whispers began. A nurse called Amy Loughran, a night shift co-worker who was battling her own health issues, grew uneasy as recovery rooms became death wards. She noticed patterns: patients on the mend dying tragically. She reviewed drug logs, lethal medications, often insulin or digoxin, vanishing with no explanation. Every suspicious death shook something inside her. Then came the pivotal moment. A familiar voice, a dying patient, and a shimmer of doubt. She agreed to help investigators, even meeting Cullen for lunch wearing a wire. It was confirmation. Cullen's quiet demur cracked. He agreed to go down fighting. The investigation revealed a staggering truth: 29 confirmed deaths, with Cullen admitting to 22 in New Jersey, plus additional murders and attempts in Pennsylvania. Yet detectives believed he could be responsible for hundreds more, perhaps up to 400. Patients weren't all terminal. Some were on the mend. Cullen often claimed he was easing suffering, but the evidence, and the heartbreaked families, spoke another story. When the jailed courtroom thundered in 2006, Cullen sat shrouded behind a sweater, wearing a vest he thought would protect him. He refused to speak. Families rose, their voices shaking. "You betrayed the ancient foundations of the healing professions. We will never feel safe in a hospital again. Burn in hell, mister." Cullen, for all eternity. He was sentenced to 11 consecutive life terms in New Jersey, followed by more in Pennsylvania. Sentences that effectively ruled out his release for centuries. A justice, but a hollow one. Because this story isn't just about one man. It's about a broken system that shuffled him from hospital to hospital. Fired in one, quietly allowed to resign in another, each institution protecting its reputation while more lives slipped through the cracks. It took the bravery of one nurse, whose heart refused to stay silent, to expose the truth. Laws changed, but scars remain. It was an early spring morning in April 2001, and the Savannah's Hospital in Port St. Lucie, Florida, held a quiet calm that seemed ordinary, until terror erupted inside its walls. A man called Alberto Serrano, a patient under psychiatric care, walked through the hospital doors, carrying nothing more than a tuna fish sandwich and a mind unraveling. He carried no weapon, but his fists would become instruments of unspeakable violence. The morning began quietly. Serrano sat in the intake area, presumably eating. Nearby, a nurse named Alda Ellington, after years of caring for others, found herself alone with a patient, waiting, unsuspecting. Then, in an instant, Serrano's world twisted. He believed the people around him looked like animals and monsters. His body reacted before his mind could stop it. Fear and delusion turned to action. One punch, then another, and Alda collapsed, lifeless, her years of service extinguished in brutal silence. But it didn't end there. Confusion swelled into chaos. Serrano turned his rage toward 3 elderly patients: Jack Dexter, 74, Truman Davidson, 87, and Everett Stoneking, 87, each lying vulnerable in their beds. He used nothing but his bare hands, striking with such force that their fragile bodies fell victim to his madness. One patient died the next day, another passed days later, and only then did detectives grasp the full extent of the catastrophe. Word spread fast. A man without weapons, but with murderous intent, had shattered safety with sheer will. Staff recoiled in horror. Families, waiting for loved ones, were told to stay away. Rumors tangled with grief. Why would a seemingly calm patient turn so savage? When police finally held Serrano down, the answers were as frightening as the crime. He believed he had to protect himself from monsters. In his mind, hospitals had become hunting grounds, and he was predator and prey both. In the courtroom that followed, the truth became legally clear. Serrano was found not guilty by reason of insanity in June 2002. Instead of prison, he was sent to a state psychiatric hospital, a place where broken minds go, not broken bodies.